China is selling off treasuries as it prepares for a blockade of Taiwan and a war with the United States. Michael Snyder reports, "We're closer to a war with China than most people realize. Right now, U.S. officials in Washington are deeply concerned that the Chinese may impose a full-blown blockade on Taiwan as a first step in a reunification campaign. Many Americans don't realize that such a move would be a really, really big deal. If China chooses to blockade Taiwan, the U.S. and China would instantly be in a state of war. All of a sudden, the flow of high-end computer chips from Taiwan would completely stop. And all of a sudden, the flow of products that we import from China would completely stop. In other words, our standard of living would be radically altered for the foreseeable future. But there are certain things that are likely to happen before China pulls the trigger on a military solution. In recent months, China has been making moves to reduce economic exposure to the U.S., and one of those moves has been to sell off U.S. Treasuries. In fact, January was the sixth month in a row in which Chinese holdings of U.S. Treasuries fell. China continued to cut its holdings of U.S. Treasuries at the beginning of the year amid rising long-term interest rates, which slashed its returns on its overseas investments after the U.S. Federal Reserve accelerated its lending cost increases last year. As foreign holdings rose for a third straight month in January, China's holdings slid to US $859.4 billion in January from $867.1 billion in December, declining for the sixth straight month and marking their lowest point since May 2009, according to data released by the U.S. Department of Treasury on Wednesday. The good news is that the Chinese have been selling off their holdings at a measured pace. If a blockade or an invasion was imminent, I would expect the Chinese to start selling off treasuries much more rapidly. We will keep watching to see if that pace changes. Meanwhile, CBS News is reporting that China just completed 3 days of military drills meant to simulate a blockade of Taiwan. China has completed 3 days of military drills meant to simulate a blockade of Taiwan. The drills included an aircraft carrier and nuclear-capable bombers as tensions continue to ramp up following a meeting with House Speaker McCarthy and Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen. Many analysts believe that they are literally showing us what they intend to do. During these drills, the Chinese practiced attacking Taiwan from the east for the very first time. China's newest aircraft carrier has for the first time practiced attacking Taiwan from the island's east coast, demonstrating Beijing's growing determination to project power beyond the Taiwan Strait and far into the Pacific Ocean, an area traditionally dominated by the United States and its regional allies. If the Chinese fully encircle the island, Taiwan would be totally cut off from U.S. help. The U.S. could try to break a blockade, but what that would mean is shooting the Chinese. Of course, the Chinese would not just use ships to impose blockade. On Monday, the Chinese sent more fighter jets towards Taiwan than they ever had before. Late Monday, the Taiwan Defense Ministry registered 91 fighter jets and 12 ships from the Chinese military within the space of 12 hours. This is a record high number of Chinese military aircraft entering the airspace surrounding Taiwan in a single day. 91 fighter jets and 12 ships. Of these, 54 aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's southwestern and southeastern airspace. The Chinese are making it very clear that they are not messing around. In fact, the Chinese military just released an animated video that simulates what an all-out attack on Taiwan would look like. Chinese military has declared it's ready to fight and smash Taiwanese independence, releasing an animated video simulating how it would launch an all-out attack on the self-governing island nation. The clip, shared by the Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command official WeChat account and later posted on Twitter by the Global Times, shows how Beijing would launch a torrent of missiles from the mainland and its navy in the Taiwan Strait to demolish Taiwan's defenses before invading. The moment that such an attack is launched, the war between the US and China will have begun. But most Americans still are not taking this seriously. Most Americans still believe that everything will work out just fine somehow, even though the Taiwanese Foreign Minister Joseph Wu just warned that we are dangerously close to an uncontrollable war, quote unquote. The Chinese military, he says, the exercises this couple of days have been very serious. Taiwanese Foreign Minister Joseph Wu told Fox News Sunday. He said, if you look at the sorties of the Chinese Air Force, together with the ships, they're coming very close to Taiwan, and any accident might spark an uncontrollable war in between Taiwan and China. And if other countries are trying to intervene, it might be the start of a war of great scale, he said. And sadly, he's quite right. We're close to the edge, but both sides just continue to raise tensions even more. On Monday, the US military sailed a guided missile destroyer right through a very sensitive area of the South China Sea, and the Chinese were not happy about that at all. An American guided missile destroyer, the USS Milius, conducted a freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea on Monday, coming within 12 nautical miles of the Mischief Reef in the Spratly Islands to challenge China's extensive territorial claims in the disputed waters. Beijing called the operation illegal. And US politicians just continue to beat the war drums. In response to a question about a potential Chinese blockade of Taiwan, US Senator Lindsey Graham suggested the US might just blockade China in return. So what would I do to deter blockade? I'd like the Chinese to know if you blockade Taiwan, you're going to have a hard time getting oil from the Middle East. I would increase training and get F-16s they need in Taiwan. There's a backlog. I would solve that backlog. I would move war forces to South Korea and Japan, he said. Unlike the conflict in Ukraine, there is no obvious peaceful solution to this crisis. Chinese leaders are absolutely obsessed with Taiwan, and they have made reunification a very high priority. But the US simply cannot allow the Chinese to take military action against Taiwan. More than 60% of the high-end computer chips that the world depends upon come from Taiwan, and once the Chinese have gobbled up Taiwan, they're not likely to stop there. At this point, China is looking to establish military bases literally all over the globe. A list of where Beijing is pursuing to exploring bases, according to the US government, includes South China Sea Islands, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia in Southeast Asia, Djibouti and United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Kenya, Sri Lanka, the Seychelles, and Tanzania in the Indian Ocean area, the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu in the South Pacific, and even Equatorial Guinea and Angola on the Atlantic coast of Africa. The only other country that has such an extensive military footprint is the United States, with its global military and commitments. A showdown with China is coming. In fact, a 4-star US Air Force general recently stated that he believes that the US and China will be fighting in the year 2025. Needless to say, 2025 is just 2 years away. The Chinese military has been preparing for such a war for a long time, and meanwhile the US military has been focusing on other things. My hope is that a conflict between our two nations can be avoided for as long as possible, but without a doubt the clock is ticking. This is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so that you won't miss any of the latest updates. I have published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material containing this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is on End of the American Dream by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.